Well, hi everyone. It's so lovely to be here. The last time I was here was with another Perry, Alex Perry, so I'm sure some of you may have been here. Today, we've got someone very, very special. I'm sure I really hardly have to introduce him because I'm sure you know who he is, but I am going to introduce him. Neil Perry, of course, was the founder of the Rockpool Group. Rockpool, of course, really started, is that okay, the sound, is that right? The food movement in Australia, which has just become, gone in leaps and bounds over the last couple of decades. Neil has always been at the forefront of that. Now, of course, he has an extraordinary relationship with the likes of Qantas, with Lexus, and of course his own restaurant called Margaret in Double Bay, where he basically never stops working. And his gorgeous wife Sam is here as well. So it's probably nice to have a few hours just to sit down and not be at Margaret. So Neil Perry, welcome. You're on.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Okay, so we've got our own stairs, so we're going to
I feel like it's like Oprah.
Oh no, it is a bit. Yeah, we're going to have a fireside chat. That's okay? That sound? It might have just been my pussy blow might be in the way.
I might just adjust the volume on the receiver.
I'm sorry.
If that's all right.
Oh, you really want to see my
Technical issues.
Okay.
Technical issues.
Technical issue. I didn't want that the whole time. Anyway, we're coming with you very soon. So, hello there, Neil.
Hello, Melissa.
So lovely to see you. I mean, I see Neil quite a bit because I do tend to pop into Margaret a few times and see different friends, and really that has now become, that is, I guess, your culinary baby.
Yes.
But I mean, I guess prior though to even starting to think about opening something like Margaret, why did you get into hospitality? What was the thing that said, bang, this is what I want to do and this is what I love?
Well, it started a long time ago in 1975. So I went on a gap year, the 47-year gap year, still gapping. And I decided I wanted to go travelling. So as many people did in those days, and probably still do, found an opportunity in hospitality to earn some extra money, go along while saving to go travelling and to go to Europe. And I think I was probably on the floor for about the second day, and I completely fell in love with what I was doing. I love the whole people aspect of it. I love the social aspect of it, and the team work, and the fact that you were, I guess, in control to some extent in the experience that people were having.
Yes.
And so I continued on that path, front of house, for the next 7 years, and that taught me a lot about being a restaurateur. And then I'd always kind of harboured a love of cooking, which was really all about what my father had taught me, and how I'd grown up without realising how important food was to me, because I thought everyone grew up like that. My dad was a butcher and amazing fisherman. All our holidays were fishing, either down Brewer Lakes or Yamba, or we lived at Ballface Point, so fishing in the Georges River on the weekends, or we skied up at Wiseman's Ferry, so after skiing out fishing in the Hawkesbury River. And he was a mad keen gardener, so we had quite a bit of property or land when we were at Ballface Point, and we had like an aviary, so we'd go and get chicken eggs, the kids, my sisters and I, in the
so
morning.
you actually really grew up surrounded by food. I think that's probably...
Yeah, absolutely.
That's probably one of the reasons you are doing what you do. I think, when you grow up surrounded by the thing that you then, make your career, that's very important.
Well, my whole cooking style is sort of fundamentally rooted in the season and the best quality of everything, and that's what I'm sort of most famous for. And building relationships with farmers and fishermen. So because my dad taught me how to dig up potatoes and plant things and obviously everything about meat, because he was a butcher, and we'd go and work with him sometimes, and always had great meat at home, but importantly, filleting fish by the beach or by the river or whatever it might be, and eating it fresh that day.
Yes.
That informed my kind of, I say, a sensibility about food, and he's always questioning me, what do you think about that? Is it, delicious? How does it taste? So at a very young age, kind of starting to think about food as more than just fuel, but as something that was enjoyable, and we would have a little glass of wine. I can remember 11 or 12, we'd have a little tiny glass of Riesling in those days, because he was very keen to introduce me into sort of the civilization or the civilized part of dining, the sophistication of eating, and also drinking, not to, as one of my daughters just recently said, no, Dad, we don't want to drink wine, we'd rather drink vodka because we really want to get pissed.
That's not exactly.
And it's like, well, that wasn't really where we started. It was about enjoyment.
Yeah.
So that really informed my cooking career, and it has ever since.
So I guess, from taking that love of food from your youth, and then basically going and creating, what was the Rockpool Group that you were in partnership with a partner, and then creating Rockpool Bar and Grill. I mean, it was a mammoth business.
Yeah.
So. But how did you do that? I mean, just to go from loving food and obviously growing up with it, but what was that next step in order to go, bang, we are now creating a big new food movement in Rockpool?
Well, it didn't happen exactly like that. As in, I didn't think. All I thought about was I wanted to create a great restaurant. So everything that I did after that grew very organically. Yeah. If I'd have thought where I was going to end up, I'd have probably run away at the time, because I was only 26 when I started cooking at Barrenjoey House, and then when I opened Rockpool, I was 32, and it was a really big gamble. My business partner Trish and I, we borrowed $1.8 million, and it was right in the middle of the recession that we had to have, and interest rates were 19%. So when you think about whatever they are now, people are dreaming about, complaining about interest rates. So, $330,000 interest in the very first year we had to make before we made a dollar for ourselves.
Did you make it?
We did. We didn't make many dollars for ourselves, but we paid the interest bill. But I think if you're going to start any business, you really have to know why you're doing what you're doing. And so for me, sure, the bricks and mortar part of it, a restaurant, I'm serving food, we're looking after people. But why we do that is to create great memories. And so I sort of sold my team in on the fact that our first initial thought was to create great memories for people. And then we really do that through the care philosophy. So that was an important part of me articulating to my team exactly what we wanted to achieve when we had guests arrive, and then giving them the motivation and understanding of how we were going to do that. So the care philosophy is really awesome because it's just one word. So care manifests itself in many ways. So for us, it was about caring about our suppliers and producers. So not only the amazing fishermen that we used, or people who are growing our vegetables, or our amazing beef producers, it was the guys who were delivering the linen or our glassware, or all the sorts of things that people took the extra time to look after. So when they arrived to us, they were the very best the country could produce.
Exactly, but I think that attention to detail is something that I've always noticed, even way back in the Rockpool days, when you had Rockpool in the rocks. You would walk in, and I remember you were one of the first who had those, the Alessi salt and pepper shakers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you've now
they're living at Margaret now after
and back then, though,
35 years.
To have those, that was really cool and expensive, because Alessi was expensive.
That's where part of the 1.8 million went.
Yeah, exactly. On salt and pepper. But I think that detail with fresh, and I think that is so important, because you know good produce. You know that you can live and die by a business, particularly a restaurant, can live and die by the freshness or non-freshness of something.
Absolutely. Well, and there's not a lot of places to hide when you love to cook simply. So simple's hard. You've got to be really good at it, the best produce, and it's got to be great craft of cooking. But to continue on where we were going with care, then we talk about caring for the place. So caring for the workspace that you have in the kitchen, the guys in the dining room, caring for how the dining room looked every day, and whether the door handles and the glass door was clean as first customers would arrive. And that was really about making sure that the restaurant would look as beautiful 10 years after it was open as it did the day it opened. Sure, more patinaed, but but cared for and looked after. And then probably the most important thing that we focus very strongly on with care is care for each other. So that whole idea, I started front of house and then I went into back of house, and there was always a bit of a war between front and back in the old days. So that caring for each other, and when I think about it, it's really worked well for us because it's been about building culture and looking after each other. And long before the Are You OK movement and all that sort of thing in our restaurants, we were always, you know, saying, are you okay? Can I help you? Are you all right with that? Are you struggling with that? Can I help you understand that cooking technique, that preparation, that service idea? Can I support you in the delivery of that service or the delivery of cooking that dish because you look to be struggling, or how can we work together as a team, because only the weakest link will bring the whole team undone. So that whole building culture through care for each other was really fundamental and important. And then we talked about caring for the community, because Trish and I are a couple of kids that came from the suburbs, and we really realised that we were very lucky to be in the position that we are, opening Rockpool, which is a very important restaurant in Sydney, even at the time when we just swung the doors open in '89. And we knew that we really had to give back, so we started an association with really people like Starlight and Children's Hospital, and to try and teach our staff that, you know, they were in a very fortunate position to be able to have a job, to be able to work in a great restaurant, to have purpose, and to be able to volunteer time to give back to people who are less fortunate, or people who needed a hand, or young children that, you know, like in Starlight's cases, going through, you know, often horrific experiences, and the kind of moment of joy that they have is when they're in the lounge or Captain Starlight comes, and their emotional well-being is just as well looked after by that as their physical well-being by the doctors. So that was really important, and we ended up starting the Rockpool Foundation, which has now become Hope Hospitality, and we're just about to relaunch that, but that's been feeding, I think we're up to 500,000 people over the last 3 years now.
Because you've really, that's one thing that you've really concentrated on in the last few years, making sure, and I think particularly with the overconsumption of food, and so many restaurants I guess, are left with all of this waste, but you always make sure that that waste is not wasted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good food, and Oz Harvest is a great partner in that. They're our logistics partner, and so that whole community thing was really important, and we go through that now with our kids all the time. And then, you know, one of the last pillars of the care is really caring about the environment. So back in '89, we were talking about where are our fish coming from, you know, with the humane treatment to animals, about waste, about, you know, how can we cut down on our footprint and make sure that we're considering everything. And it's sort of not mutually exclusive to what's going on, because most chefs around the world of reasonable status have a very environmental attitude, because we take our product from the ocean or the land, and it's important for us that these environments keep going and giving back for generations to come. So you see, we've been talking about it for a lot longer. Sadly, the government didn't get on board for a long time, and now we have a new government that's been brought to power, hopefully by a climate change agenda, and that's important. As I always say to the kids who work for me when I give them talks and I'm motivating them, I always say, it's really up to you guys to get political, because my generation sucked the marrow out of the world and we left you with a shit show, so you guys better get on now and fix it up. So it's fantastic to see young people getting involved in calling out people for unenvironmental issues.
But I even noticed, you know, when I've been lucky enough to go to Margaret or earlier with Rockpool, the camaraderie always of you and your staff. I mean, you know, after lunch, and you're preparing for the dinner service, you all sit together and you all, like, you know, chat about, you know, probably what happened or what didn't happen properly that day, and then the menu that night. There's a really, really good camaraderie that I actually haven't noticed at any other restaurant as good.
Well, that's our family meal time, and we're so busy that we've got people still leaving from lunch before people are coming in 15 minutes later for dinner. So we sit down, and one of the things that I've been really strong on is we actually plan the family meals the week before, so it's not leftovers, it's actually we buy produce and we cook a proper meal.
The restaurant.
Yeah, and we do things like we do full vegetarian vegetarian meals, or we'll do a meat substitute like V2, and we talk to the kids about how important their choices on how they eat. Yes, we're always going to probably eat meat and hopefully wild caught fish, but we've got to do it so that it's environmentally possible for us to continue, and that's not factory farming and grain-fed beef and trawling fish and all that sort of thing. So I'm continually trying to teach the guys this. So our fundamental philosophy is, if you come to work for me, then I want you to be a better cook. Yes, I want you to be a better manager. Yes, I want you to be a great sommelier, a great waiter. But fundamentally, I would love you to leave our restaurant being a better person and thinking more deeply about all the things that you can affect around you, including the relationships with the people that are important to you.
And I guess, and that relationship, I think probably a lot of you would know that Neil has done all of the food and creates all of the menus for Qantas, which is a huge thing, because, when you're dealing with an airline, when you have to think of food that is going to travel, how did that relationship come about? Did they approach you and suddenly say, look, we want you, or was it a selection process?
No. It was actually it was 96, and Jeff Dixon, who's the former CEO, but he was the head of commercial, and they were putting in the new seat flat for first class, and of course you've all been on that, haven't you? The story, Melissa just rode one back just recently. So. The story goes that he said, I'm getting all this great hardware around the kitchen table. I really need to do something about the software, the food, the service, and what have you. And his wife, Dawn, famously said, well, the only person to get is Neil Perry. So
she obviously had a very good few meals at Rockpool.
She did. And so basically, I had the MCA at that stage and a couple other things. And so they got in contact with me. I went out, we sat down, we had a really long conversation with the guys who are head of the in-flight services, and they talked about all the things that they'd like to do, and they might get another chef out of Australia, out of Melbourne, and might do one main course in economy and one in business class, and create a panel. And so I went back, and then they called me, and I said, look, I would, Bernard Shirley, he was the head of public affairs back in the day, you might remember Bernard.
I do, yeah.
He rang me about 3 days later and said, so, what do you think? And I said, well, look, Bernard, I'm old enough to think that I still own Qantas, and I love that brand. I think it is truly the spirit of Australia and the fabric of the country. You've got a great brand. I've built this amazing brand. And the reality of it is, if I can't control it, I'm not really interested. So you're better off to go with a group of people who want to do what you want to do. And the conversation.
So you basically read him the right act. You said,
I did.
If I don't do it my way,
it's the highway. So basically, Jeff rang me about 3 days later and said, what will it take? Actually, I'll go back, because just after that phone call, I was at a tourism task force meeting. We'd just taken over the IMAX theatre and the catering in the room upstairs, and I was at a dinner with a few people. Julia King was the head of Louis Vuitton and head of airports, and a couple of other people, and Jeff was representing Qantas on that, and I was there, and we all went round. We talked about what we had to do for the Olympics, and I talked about really the ability for us to create memories through great service in the Olympics, that we had a lot of the other stuff covered.
Yes.
But if we delivered great service beyond people's expectations, and that service that I think Australians give so brilliantly, which is very professional but amazingly approachable and welcoming. And so I gave a talk about that. Anyway, the next day I got a phone call from Jeff, and he just said, mate, what do we have to do to get you involved? And so I said, well, I'll need staff, and I'll need to work with you guys, and we'll need to make it so that I do all of the food in first class and all of the food in business class and all the food in the lounges, because I'm not interested.
That's right, because there had to be a continuity, because you can't just say, all the first class and the business class people going to get the smarty pants food, and economy doesn't. There really had to be a follow through within the whole Qantas brand.
Yeah, and we've worked our way
Really
through everything, and now we're involved in service, and we've been selecting the wine. I mean, I've been
but even
involved
down to the crockery and the
we worked with
linen and all that. You are so active in organising all of that.
Well, 25 years, I've almost outlasted everybody.
You have.
Yeah, I started before Alan, so I've been there longer than him.
You might be running the show soon.
Yeah, and then...
Hope you've got lots of shares.
Yeah, I should have bought, I nearly bought a lot of shares at 98 cents when they were in that war, and I wish I had have, because it'd be...
Okay, there's so many if-onlys in our lives, isn't there?
Yeah. So...
Wait, but just thinking of, obviously with COVID, no one was flying anywhere, but thinking of the hospitality business and obviously even students, we didn't have any students here internationally. How difficult has it been for you, even with staff? Getting staff. So a few times I've been in Margaret, and I know one of your daughters is working, and Sam is working as well. Is it really still now that we're sort of coming out of it? Are you finding it better?
It's actually harder because the economic activity has bounced back to pre-COVID levels, and you see, you're talking about airlines, you see the shit show basically that is airports at public holidays and things like that, and that's really those poor guys on the front line struggling with, abuse and tempers, and it's just physically impossible to do it with so many less people, and we know the guys from the airport corporation, and everybody's struggling. We were chatting last night about the fact that there are 900,000 less people in Australia than there were in 2019, and you couldn't get staff in 2019. So it's great to see students coming back. Please come and work some of your spare time at Margaret, and I'm opening a new bakery.
So you're all going to be there.
We promise to teach you about culture, the care philosophy, and the pursuit of excellence, because that's what we do. And it's interesting, Macy, my daughter, who's in year 12 now, and Indy, the little one who's in 10, call it Macy's Squad, but when we reopened on October the 13th, we just got a whole lot of those kids. There's about 35 of them on the roster, and they slot in and out, sometimes 2 times a week, 1 time a week. They polish, they run food. They've started, Mason, a couple of her girlfriends host. So we need a lot of them because they're studying as well, and then you've got to cope with their parents taking them on the annual holiday in June to Europe and whatever. So they're not that reliable. So, but the reality of it is, if I'd have had waiters working the way that they were working, and then finishing and polishing cutlery and glassware and crockery till all hours of the morning, we would not have been able to do the restaurant the way it was. But look, it's been interesting times. If it wasn't for COVID, I probably wouldn't have started Hope Delivery, which has now become Hope Hospitality. Wouldn't have been able to feed all of those people. Wouldn't be able to get this amazing charity that we're just about to launch big time. Wouldn't have probably left the Rockpool Dining Group. Wouldn't have found Margaret, because I wouldn't have come to the suburbs. Definitely probably wouldn't have joint ventured in the bakery, because I was talking to Mike continually about opening a bakery that potentially would give a loaf of bread for a loaf of bread bought.
And this is a bakery that's next to Margaret.
That's going to open in August. And I don't think we would have opened as strongly as we've opened. When we were supposed to open on June the 25th and went into lockdown, not perfect timing.
I remember there was a dinner that Qantas hosted.
Yeah, it was the last meal.
On Monday, and it was June 21. I remember, and there was a whole group of us there. We all went and had this, like the first dinner at Margaret. We were so excited. And then that was the Monday night, and Wednesday morning, basically the entire eastern suburb.
Well, it was going crazy.
Yeah, and everyone went into lockdown.
Mr. Bailey was spreading it like wildfire.
And a few people had been to the hair salon, and they'd been to that dinner that night, so it all got a bit crazy.
And I remember clearly, it was incredible, because we lost 2 functions going in, and we had 10,000 bookings for the first 6 weeks, and I was just thinking, wow, I've just timed this to perfection. I'm just getting GST back from the last quarter because I've had no revenue, but I've been paying the building costs. I've got the one last building cost plus a little bit of retention. I've got the overdraft in place. I'm looking really good. I've got all of this revenue that I can count on going forward. And then like in one foul swoop. It's just, oh shit, I've just got bills coming in now.
Yeah.
And the first week, we had fish, swordfish and tuna and coral trout and King George whiting, like half a ton of seafood that had just flown in.
But what you also did too, which was I think really interesting, you pivoted your business as well, because you then started to do, not delivery, but people could come and then pick up, pies that you would then use the producers that you normally deal with. So I think that was really good. So you didn't just close everything.
Well, we did for about a week and a half.
Yep.
So the idea was that we were going to close for 1 to 2 weeks, and then it continued to move. So I just got to the point where I went, I thought I had everything planned. Oh my God, why me? How could it happen? Rang the bank manager. I might have to ask for more of an overdraft. Sort of I really started to freak out actually. And then I spent about a week and a half, and it was probably annoying Sam with my negativity and whatever, but I was sort of emailing the staff and saying, this is how you access government help. Let's all get on a Zoom call. How are you feeling? Is everything okay? We sent them home with all this beautiful fish and vegetables, and we made care packages for everybody because we knew they were off for at least a week or so. We didn't know how long it would take to access government funding. We didn't know how quickly the government would move. But about a week and a half in, I just realised this is not going to be over very, very quickly at all. So I just was lucky. The guys from Providores approached me. I said, yes, I'll jump straight on board to that. So that came at a great time. So we started packing meals for delivery, committed to cooking classes, got some online things going with Qantas. We were down there for 2 weeks. We realised there are a lot of people in Double Bay. So I said, let's make burgers. Then we started making pies, then we were making sandwiches, and we were doing 2 hours of this crazy 450 burgers in 2 hours, and then packing out the meals, and the grill had never been so busy. It was just cooking so many, packing out 300-400 boxes of Providores on a Friday and Saturday, and then or Thursday and Friday, and it got to the point where we on the 25th of June, we were a bunch of people. Some of us had worked together, but we were a bunch of individuals who were about to go into this restaurant and open Margaret. And by the 13th of October, we were a family that had worked together through thick and thin, through isolation where we were all together every day, through building this great relationship. And I closed for 10 days before the reopening, and we just trained, and we had this fantastic family meal at the end where we all sat down and we cooked porchetta and lamb and fish and vegetables and antipasti, and we just put it in the middle of the table. We opened lots of great wine, and we had a fantastic, big boozy
Wish we were
dinner.
there. Why weren't we there?
And then we opened this restaurant, and it's still to this day, and I've opened a lot of restaurants, it's still to this day the best restaurant opening I've ever done in terms of everyone knowing their role.
Yes.
And I don't think there was one meal that went to a wrong table that whole weekend, which is almost unheard of. And
particularly if you've got young staff, young new staff.
And they were brilliant. And now to see the young kids who are out polishing and stuff, and now 6 months, 9 months later, to see them walk through the restaurant with a tray of Riedel glasses in their hand, as if they'd been doing this up there the whole life. Or not even think about it, just doing it naturally, because that's what they've been doing for the last 6 months, is really gratifying. And to see all the guys who've worked together. And so we had a fantastic staff party in December. Probably not the best thing to do because there are a lot of hangovers even 2 days later. But we're having...
young, they
can cope. I don't know about me. But but I'm giving them another one in July because they just deserve it and they've worked so hard. So this whole idea of building culture so that people want to come and work for us is really important. And that sort of the ending of the care philosophy is caring about the customers. And it's interesting because I did the care philosophy talk at Qantas in town hall meetings a lot when I first started. And it's actually now part of the whole brand philosophy at Qantas, which is great. And but people used to put their hand up and say, "Oh, Neil, doesn't the customer come first?" And I said, "Well, it's exactly like if you step into a kitchen, you don't start with the dish, right? You have to do all the mise en place. So the care philosophy is about all of us, including the restaurant, being in the right place. And then when the customer walks in, they're just naturally cared for because we're all ready to do that one thing." And then the other thing that's very important, I'd encourage every single person who ever goes into business to always remember this, but we have to care about profitability. So when we've done all of that, you know, if I'm not making money, then we can't have staff parties and we can't open wine on Sunday because we've done with our family meal because we've done such a great job. We can't go and replace the cutlery because I know it's made of stainless steel. I don't know where it goes. I understand how glasses and crockery break, but you can't replace the crockery and the cutlery and the glassware and you know, have the restaurant sort of looked after and repaired every year and do the rendering and do all the things that are really important and buy the menu paper and, you know, you struggle. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that all of your endeavour creates profitability so that you can look after staff, you can create bonus systems, you can do things that motivate people. And it's interesting, I worked with some Americans that motivated people through, go and do a sales tactic and, you know, if you sell the most apple pies, you get this. And I always think motivation is doing the best job that you possibly can because you believe in the people you're working with so much. And then it's not motivation when you're rewarded separately to that. So I think you do a great job, you get rewarded for that. To go out and incentivize people to deliberately try to upsell or whatever, they should actually be doing that because they want their customer to have the great experience. They want to create great memories. And I think one of the most gratifying times of my life, my wife and I were not married at the time, but we were, it wasn't the year before we got married. It was 2002, and Scott Bowles, who's a journalist, I mean, I can't believe it, but he's still doing short play. It's unbelievable. Anyway, it's still doing it after all this time. And he rang me and he said, "Oh, Neil, you've just been voted number 4 restaurant in the top 50 restaurants in the world. What do you know or think about that?" And I said, "I've got no idea what the top 50 restaurants in the world are, but I'm very gratified that happened." Then all the chefs that were nominated, the restaurant magazine that it was then before they spun it off and sold it as a brand, invited all the chefs to come to the next awards night, but we all had to fly ourselves there and get there and whatever. So, but we're all curious enough to do it, and some amazing friendships were formed through that experience of going to London every year and then going later as it started to spin off. But one of the things that made me think was amazing about that was that they asked 400 people around the world what their 5 favourite restaurant experiences were. And Australia's a long way away from everywhere, and they were all European and North American, and there was no one really in Australia at that time, and English. And there are enough people who we'd created a memory for that they thought to say Rockpool.
And what was the memory that most of them had?
Well, I think just a great meal there, and it must have been one of their best out of 5 because to get to number 4 and the next year number 8, and we were in the top 50 for 7 years in a row, which was fantastic. So I think that, you know, all the time that I'd spent talking to my staff about creating a great memory had been justified in that happening.
So I mean, what is amazing also about Neil, I mean, he's so hands-on. I mean, you walk into Margaret and he's in the kitchen. So he's not just swanning around, sort of going up to people and going, "Do you have a drink?" Like, he literally is sweating in that kitchen to get everything
in front of that fire.
In front of exactly, he's got stuff going. But you always make an effort to come. It's funny just looking at that photograph there. You come and look and say hello to people.
Yeah.
I always think, how do you even have the energy to actually come up to, particularly some customers who are probably assholes, to actually come up to them and go,
most of our customers are lovely. Like you, Melissa.
Some people can be a little bit
difficult.
Difficult.
I don't know, the waiters will often say, "Oh, there's a difficult customer," and I go and talk to them, and
but
they're
it must be your
you know, so...
Is the kitchen your happy place, apart from a ski field?
Yeah.
I know you love
I think, look, you know, this is coming from a point of, I never thought of my life ever outside of Rockpool. I built that brand, started in 1989, came on and became Rockpool Bar and Grill. You know, I did sell it to private equity and became part of that group, and there were a lot of things we weren't going to do. But I always thought that I'd be part of that. So now to leave and find that in Margaret I kind of found my happy place.
Yes.
And my whole family worked there. I named it after Josephine, Macy, Indy, my beautiful wife Sam, of course. I named it after my mother because it's the only restaurant in my entire life that I've not had a partnership other than my family. Right. So it's just me and the guys that are involved. And so when I just talked about the care philosophy, my dad sort of centered my whole life about how I cook and what I believe in food. And my mum really created in my mind all the sense of hospitality and generosity that allowed me to create the care philosophy. So it was important for me to probably mark how important she was in my life, to call the restaurant Margaret. And now I keep saying people, it's taken me 47 years to find out where I really want to be, and I don't want to be anywhere else but Margaret. So when I'm at Margaret and I have a plan to open one more restaurant in Double Bay, which is, I just have to cross the road, and the bakery, my whole plan is I'm retired to Double Bay, and the only time I ever leave there is to go on holidays.
Yes.
So they were going, do you want to come down and do Melbourne Food and Wine Festival? And once upon a time, all of these things help build your brand.
Yeah, of course, and then brand building for you is and was very, very important.
And it's done.
It's done.
So I'm just retired there, so I'd rather be with my customers. And that's another really important thing that I learnt about. I never spent any money on advertising in my entire restaurant career. When I came into the new business that very generated by kind of American ideas, there was an advertising budget, and lots of restaurants have them. I mean, Hems does it and what have you. But I've always relied on editorial. And then I also think, more importantly, relying on your customers. So my one word of advice would always to remember, don't spend money on trying to get new customers. Spend money on the customers that you have, and you'll get a better spend out of them, and you'll get more loyalty, and they'll become part of your family. And so, loyal customers and regular customers have to be treated like gold. First-time customers have to be treated like potential regular customers. Everybody in that business is important, and if you sink all of your marketing opportunities and energy and your focus into those customers you've got there that day, you will build a successful regime.
And obviously, in these days of marketing, and social media is such a big part of it, do you have a whole lot of food influencers trying to get a free meal? Do they call Sam or do they call Josephine and say, I'll come in and I'll give you this if I get a free meal?
People are always approaching, but I mean, companies approach you and say, Margaret's really hot at the moment, we want to bring down influencers and business people, and we want to launch this brand, and it'll be 50 people. And I mean, I've got companies honestly offering me $50,000 to open on a Tuesday, and I go like, I'm too tired. It's like Sam and I, that's our Saturday and Sunday, and I'm tied up with the charity and Qantas, and for me to get a day where like I'm not doing anything, but not standing in the kitchen is really important. I mean, on Tuesday we're talking about wages and looking at things, and I'm always delving into cookbooks and stuff, but the reality, I kind of begrudgingly kind of opened the restaurant. I just did Lexus and Nigella dinner, which was really lovely, and Nigella's gorgeous and I love her, and but by Sunday night last week I was just thinking, the sixth day killed me.
Too much.
It's only money.
And so Lexus, of course, that relationship's been going for
12 years.
So 12 years. So how does food, and cause I guess the lifestyle of driving a car, because they've got a fashion ambassador, you're like the culinary ambassador, a sporting ambassador, another one. So what do you have to actually do with Lexus from a hospitality culinary point of view?
Well, I'll just work with them on things like the dinner I did the other day. But with anything that I do, and I'd suggest you always do this, because I get approached to do thousands of things with thousands of different companies. I kind of try and draw this circle around my life, and if things don't intersect with that circle, we don't share values. I don't work with them, and if we share values, I feel really comfortable in talking and working and supporting those people or those companies. So they have to have, sustainability, really good core values about people, and they have to focus strongly on integrity and community. And I feel with Qantas, with Lexus, if you look at Lexus focusing on where they're heading with sustainable vehicles, the quality and craftsmanship of the build within the car, I've always found them amazing to deal with people, incredibly respectful, and also importantly, very community minded. Anytime I've said, can we do this or work on that, they've come to support my charities and my people. And they were one of the first people I called, and they jumped straight on board when we talked about Hope Delivery. And we raised $400,000 in about 3 weeks. So they were a really important part of that. And so with Qantas the same. I love working with Murdoch. I've done most of my books with them because, again, we share values and we work really well together, and the teams bounce off each other. And so those sorts of things are really important to me. And then, I work closely with the developers that Palace House. They've gotten them involved in Hope Foundation and now Hope Hospitality Foundation. So got them involved in that. And the reason is, I very rarely dealt with landlords who are as reasonable as them. And I really feel like we have a very strong family partnership. And so I'm sort of very comfortable talking to other people about my experiences with them and what they've helped me do, and how supportive they are of building a community when they put a building up.
Yes.
And they're not just talking about the community within the building, but how does that affect the community of Double Bay?
Yes.
And we have plans to do amazing things in Double Bay, which will make it one of the great food retail, food service and food retail, as well as retail destinations.
For people who don't know Double Bay, so it's in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, so it's on the other side of the bridge, and it was like the really sort of smarty pants suburb for many, many years. And then it really sort of went through a bit of a dive.
Since the early 2000s, it's 20 years. It's gone.
It just sort of lost its soul, and there was people would open restaurants or bars or clubs, and it just nothing quite sort of worked. But now, and then there was the Ritz-Carlton Hotel that opened.
Now the Intercon,
which is the Intercon. That's right, Intercon. So it sort of has had a really strong revival, particularly food-wise. And I think having Margaret there was like, out of all of the suburbs you could have chosen, I think it was like a perfect choice.
Yeah, and I think COVID had a lot to do with that, because I felt people felt comfortable coming back into where they live, and the city less important, although it's still very important and will function perfectly. And as tourism and everything comes back, it'll function brilliantly. But we'll always have a different relationship with the suburbs now. And I think one of the things we want to do is build this wonderful village, but importantly, I'm trying to talk to them about getting people who really care about their restaurants, so that, like me, it's not a restaurant group opening a restaurant and you never see the principal or whatever. It's me living and breathing it, and people coming and becoming great regular customers and being looked after, and knowing that they can treat it like it's a local. For me, I when I briefed the designers, I just said, look, I really want it to be simple, sophisticated and warm and comfortable, because I don't even see it. I don't see it in terms of restaurants. I see it as sort of a kind of communal meeting place for. It's a beautiful little eatery in the suburbs, and obviously it's become much more than that. But the little eatery in the suburbs. So that's how I sort of viewed it, and I think the designers with architecture, the curves and the tone and the colours and the stone and the materials chosen, it just feels very warm and comfortable.
So they'll have to be booking a table there, so you have to save up your bucks and come. But so obviously we've got so many students here today. And obviously some of you may want to open restaurants. You may want to be working in hospitality. What would be, I guess, your couple of tips to give to our young guns who are wanting to perhaps follow a path similar to yours?
Well, again, get a very strong understanding of why you're doing what you're doing. So it's important. I'm opening a restaurant because I want to make money, or I'm opening a restaurant because I love good food. The reality of it is, a restaurant is the sum of all its parts. The most important thing, and I learnt this the hard way because I lost a lot of money in restaurants in the 90s, is location, location, location. So you have to get a great location, and that's what I walked into Margaret, because I wasn't supposed to be looking at restaurants, and I'd signed various different contracts and restraints, and I had a hoodie on a dark thing, and it was a rainy night, and it was a building site behind me, and I walked in and I stood there and I spent 5 minutes and I walked out and went, where do I sign? So I knew exactly that was it. So you've got to feel for it. And then the other thing that I learned was then that location or building has to bring something to the mix, and then everything that you put inside it will really bring it to life. So making sure that you understand exactly what you're trying to achieve, making sure you can take your team with you, because there's no point if they don't follow you.
Yeah.
You really, really need to lead by example. I think that's all the best restaurants in the world. The principals lead by example, whether they're front of house or back of house, and then really focus on the detail.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you really get into the detail of things and make sure that that's perfect, it's kind of like, you know, Dad's old saying, look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves.
Yes.
You know, it's like really get those small things right, and everything will blossom around that. And so that for me is important, and make sure that you look after your team. So you know, worry about how hard they're working, worry about whether, you know, they can burn out, or make sure that their focus is, you know, this is a marathon, not a sprint, and we have to make sure that we can have a great lifestyle and we're really enjoying our life, and we have to have a great job and fantastic job satisfaction, and you kind of meld those two balls together, and you really create an environment where you've got incredible sustainability.
Yes.
and people can have a great work-life balance. They can work into work, and they can put all of their energies into it because they're revitalised. They love what they do on their weekends and on their night off and on their day off, and they also really love what they do when they walk into the premise, and the fact that there's a kind of shared goal. You know, when we're standing around and we're doing staff briefing, we're really talking about what that shared goal is for the night, to look after our customers, to create that great memory. Because restaurants are like, you can't write it like a book and just pass it around and read it and print it and, you know, do it once like I did with that book. You've just got to do it again and again and again. So understand how monotonous it is first, so understand what you're getting into, and then create it so that it's a joy, not a monotony.
Yes, yes.
And so one of my things that I talk to people about a lot, I love Japanese culture, and if you think about, you know, a sushi chef that might spend their entire life, they spend 7 or 8 years learning and being able to cut fish, and then they spend their entire life cutting it, looking after it, buying it, revering it, and every single day what they do is they try to do it better than they did the day before. And if you don't have that as a focus, then it's really easy to get bored.
Yes.
And boredom is the death of all great quality endeavours, because when you're doing a craft, you've got to do it over and over again, and you've got to do it better and better. Yeah, it'd be like kind of being a sports person and not trying to improve every day.
Yeah.
Great elite sports people don't go out like, oh, I had a great run last week, I'll just have the same run. It's like, wow, how do I
just make that little bit
where
better.
is that world record? And if I break it, how do I break it again?
Yes.
And that's what you have to do. And so I always say to kids, you know, you've got to take away, if you've done it again and again and again, and you focused on making it better every time, you end up with a great skill. So all of those things stick with you for the rest of your life, and you end up rounding out your skills and becoming a great cook. But the people who go, oh, I've been cutting fish for 2 months, I'm so bored, chef, or I've been making pasta, or I've been on the grill, or, you know, so...
So 2 more questions. I know we've got some questions from our audience that I'd like to know. So if we're coming over to your house for dinner tonight, what are you cooking up? What would you be cooking up? That's simple, or would you be getting Uber Eats?
No. Well, it could be a lot of things, but yeah, it could be something really simple. So it would either be, you know, rotisserie chicken cooked over charcoal, or a beautiful piece of fish, coral trout or whiting or whatever, maybe in the pan, maybe on the grill. Again, I'd probably braise some vegetables off beforehand and pan roast the potatoes and throw them in the middle of the table, and we'd have anchovies and great bread and butter, and in summer some great tomatoes, or some braised zucchini, or you know. So I think
he makes it sound so simple.
well, it needs to be, and also when you're cooking at home, when you're cooking in restaurants, it's very serious and very professional and more focused. But when you're cooking at home, it's about the love of the people that are coming to your house, and it's about looking after each other, and it's about having conversations around the table. And the worst thing you can do is kind of overstretch your ability. Yes. So you always want to cook within your ability, but the most important thing is cooking something properly, seasoning it properly. So difference between a professional chef and a home cook normally is the amount of salt that we use. And people, the simplest thing is washing a lettuce, drying it properly, dressing it with great great olive oil, great vinegar or lemon, sea salt, freshly ground pepper, just the right coating. And then every time someone comes to my place, I go like, wow, that salad's so amazing. But the reality of it is everyone can make a great salad. You just need all those simple ingredients and do it properly. And
I think the final thing before we head to the audience, like the whole celebrity chef culture, we've obviously got, a million chefs that we see on TV, most of whom don't even have restaurants. Yeah. Which I've always sort of found quite extraordinary of late. I mean, they've started restaurants, they've gone on to TV shows. They've not had much luck actually maintaining a restaurant. I know television is something you've done, but it really isn't something that you are desperate to be doing a show.
No, I sort of gave it. I
started doing. I
did TV from 2000 to 2006 on Lifestyle, and they were really projects which were like my cookbooks, just about produce or about teaching people how to cook better. Yes. And engaging in shopping better, which is like good shopping is good cooking essentially. I hate the term. So when people say to me, "You're a celebrity chef," I say, "I work for a living." Yeah. So celebrity. The only reason I will ever like it is when someone says you're a celebrity chef. If that'll let me raise money for charity, I'll accept that. Totally. But other than that, it really is. I work for a living. I'm 65 in 2 weeks' time. I'm doing like 70 hours a week, and I don't ever see that changing because I couldn't imagine retiring and not being with my people and my team and my family. Yeah. So, but I think it's a very interesting phenomenon. But the guys who kind of dedicate themselves to that celebrity thing are generally just like really good with people, very funny, amusing, and it comes across as they're entertainers, right? They're entertainers, exactly. So, and they go on reality television programs and like. For those guys to go, to go into the jungle and stuff, and you just go dancing with stars, and I just go like, I could not even imagine for a moment doing that. I'm not desperate to get more people to follow me on Instagram or to do whatever. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I sort of watch a lot of chefs and restaurants who have very manufactured Instagram where everything's perfect and whatever. And I take the shittest shots and I'm on the run and, that looks really good. Like on the weekend, some beautiful boned coral trout just came off the grill and I'm holding it over the floor, taking a photo at the light shit. Yeah, but it's about beautiful produce at the moment, So for me, I think my followers get that sometimes it's out of focus and sometimes it's a shit thing, but I do it.
And the one thing, I know, because you're wanting to wrap me up, I know, internationally or even locally, is there a chef that you look up to and think, boy, I love the way you have gone, I love the way you have taken hospitality to another level, or is there that one person?
Yeah, look, I mean, someone who's, I love and I met through Top 50 and has worked with me on lots of charity events is Thomas Keller out of Napa and also Per Se, and he's got Surf Club in Miami. But he is just a phenomenal attention to detail guy, and he's also a great leader. Yep. You see his people all love him and stay with him for a long time. Like I have people who stay with me for a long time, but he's fantastic. I mean, Victor from Echevarri in Spain, I love, stays in his restaurant, cooks beautiful food on wood fire. Super exciting guy. One of the young kids I really like here, Matt Lindsay, I think Esther and Polly, and he's now doing AP Bakery, so sadly we'll come up against each other. But he's a really nice guy, and we actually had dinner last night at Chaco Bar, and I really love Kento Kobe. He's got Chaco Bar ramen and Chaco Bar yakitori and a I can't remember what the name of the little tempura restaurant, but just guys, entrepreneurs giving it a red hot go.
Well,
you know, I love that.
When you travel, and I know you love travelling, you and Sam travel. You always tend to. I think we were all in LA together, and you took us to a couple of like really sort of, you know, left of field, out of the way, sort of little like holes in the wall. But I think that you love discovering that, whether you're in Tokyo,
absolutely.
Los Angeles, or
we'll only usually go, like we're going to London in two weeks' time in Rome, and in London, you know, I'm going to the Ledbury because Brett, great Australian kid, closed for 2 years during COVID. He's just reopened. It's a Michelin 2-star.
Wow.
He did a charity dinner with me in Sydney when we got Thomas and Heston and all those guys together in Bar and Grill, and he's just a really good guy. We catch up with him when we're in London, and we're going to Ledbury. But I just love places like, you know, River Cafe and Brat, that they cook over charcoal, and you know, I love eating what I cook, and I cook what I love eating. So Margaret, like that book, the food I love, which is a bit like everything I love to cook, which came out in 2004. Macy was born, and by the time I opened Bar and Grill in 2006, a lot of what was in that book kind of influenced that restaurant, and I got a feeling that a lot of what's in this book influenced Margaret. And I've sort of come full circle to where, when I opened Rockpool, you know, I was like, I want it to be the best restaurant in the world. I want to, you know, I'm cooking this stuff for my customers, but, you know, I want to do something different no one else has ever done. And you know, I'm cooking for critics. I want to blow people out of the water, and you know, that's awesome, and it's great. And it got my reputation going, and it, you know, got me in the top 50 restaurants in the world and whatever. But the reality is, I've never been happier in a kitchen than where I am now at Margaret, cooking the food that I love. And really with my family and my people that you know, my staff that I adore, and it's like I don't go to work. I you know, that's a cliche. Find a job you love and you never go to work. But I can tell you, I am a living example, and I've worked 2 lifetimes in one. But I'm a living example of the fact that is true. And you know, if you really love doing what you're doing, doesn't matter how tired you are or what you're doing or what you've got to scale, you know, you attack it with enthusiasm, because it's a passion. I kind of live, breathe it. You know, you've got to eat, right, to survive. So how lucky am I that I'm involved in a business where I'm not just eating to survive, but I'm eating for joy. I'm creating joy for other people. I'm creating great memories, and importantly, hopefully, I'm influencing people to cook better, eat better, shop better.
Totally. It's that passion of yours, I think, that's totally infectious. So thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Marissa.
Isn't he great? There better be some, there must be a question or 2 or 3. It'd have to be. We've got the man here.
Or anyone who needs a job.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, hello. You might need a microphone, probably. Actually, there is a microphone there. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you think are important traits to have to become a successful business person?
Yeah, look, I think you know, being patient is really important, and understanding that all the things that you do have influences on other people, and that's how I've kind of lived my life. I mean, Gordon Ramsay's got to where he got by using the exact opposite of that. Yes. So there are always, well, you know, there are always different ways to skin the cat, but I think, look, you know, attention to detail, focus, enthusiasm, always looking at things as a potential challenge and a solution, rather than looking and going, oh my God, how am I going to get over this? Being really nimble and being able to, you know, things like, I did spend a week feeling sorry for myself when COVID came, but realising that I had to change and to do things differently and not do what I wanted to do. I wanted to open a beautiful restaurant, but I you know, we did hamburgers and we packed boxes, and you know, we did online cooking classes, and we did everything we could do just to keep the staff stood up and in a job and having a relationship with the restaurant. If I'd have shut down then, it would have been a disaster. I don't know how we would have opened. So I think that sort of idea, and also I would say to always view every opportunity with how it affects what you're doing and how it helps you grow. So, you know, for better or worse, I've kind of organically grown in. So, you know, being able to do all the food service and beverage for Qantas, the national airline, is a really incredible, powerful brand building experience within my brands that I have now, Margaret and Baker Blue, the bakery. And that happened because I was really strong, I suppose, on how I felt that we could help each other. So I think having a really strong view of where you sit in the sort of whole scheme of things, what you're trying to achieve, and not get sidetracked. It's really easy when lots of things are coming at you to get sidetracked, to choose the wrong. And I've chosen some wrong things. I've gone into wrong restaurants. I've closed them. I've lost money. You know, and I think most importantly, you know, to learn by your mistakes. There's no doubt that you learn 10 times more from every mistake that you have than you do from every triumph that you have. And you know, if I was, you know, talking to the 30-year-old Neil Perry or the 18-year-old Neil Perry, I wouldn't say don't make mistakes, because you know, if you don't make those mistakes, you don't learn firsthand, you don't grow, and you don't understand how to avoid those pitfalls. So I think, you know, I just think making those mistakes when you're younger, so that you can grow and mature and understand that you know, maturity does count for something, and people who are older do have a lot of experience, a lot of things. One of the things that I really love about COVID at the moment, and what I love about our restaurant, is how young and old people are interacting with each other. So, you know, I'm the oldest person there, but we've got a couple of people in their 60s on the floor. I've got, well, I'm not actually, Damien Pignolet, who is really one of my influences, and I went and learnt to cook for with him and his wife Josephine, which is why my daughter's called Josephine, in 1982. He had a terrible accident. He's reasonably incapacitated, and he's on a pension, and he can work so many hours and earn extra money. And we have him work with us. He doesn't really do much, but we listen to his stories, and it's important. Yeah, so the kids listen to him, and it's important to be able to give back. You know, he gave me a great opportunity. Now I want to give him an opportunity to be in an environment that gives him joy every day. So, like, it's really learning from your mistakes, learning that you know, maturity and growing is an important pathway, because when you're 30 you think you know everything. You know, when I opened Rockpool, it was like, you just kind of thought, oh, you know. I remember some German guy working for me, and you wouldn't know who this is, but Auberge de Lille were very famous 3-star chefs, the Haviland brothers, and the son worked in there, and this guy, I can't remember his name, it was in 1980
something.
5. And he said he'd worked for the son, and the father was still probably in his 65 or something, my age, or maybe 5 years older than me. Some would have been 30. And we were talking about something, and I said to him, oh, you know, who's the better cook? And he just looked at me like I had like 3 heads, and I'd realised, because I was stupid enough to think if you were 30, you'd probably you know, could be as good a cook as somebody who's 65 and earned a Michelin 3-star for the last 35 years or whatever. And I just thought it was a really big wake up. I just went, wow, you're so right. You know, the more you know, the more you realise that you don't know. So that getting to that kind of maturity and understanding that being in your 20s and 30s and being gung-ho is awesome, but the reality is you do leave that behind when you get older, but you add a lot of understanding and knowledge and wealth of knowledge, and it's great to tap into. And the other really important thing I would say to anybody starting any business is never be afraid to employ and work with people who are smarter than you. So I've always employed people that have skills that I don't, or are doing something better than I'm doing, because I can't do everything at that level. And so I always bring a sort of group of people together, and I love learning off them. It's fantastic. It's amazing sitting drinking wine with a master of wine, and it's fantastic working with guys who you know, have been cutting fish in Japan for the last 20 years. And so you know, lots of people get their ego in the way of that, and I think it's really important to put that aside. And if you see great teams around the world, and you see whether it's restaurants or, you know, IT, I would imagine that the Alassian guys would tell you the same story. They would, you know, they had the drive to put this business together and to start the platform and to drive it forward. But I would imagine if you sat down with Mike Cannon-Brookes, he would say that he's got 100 people that are smarter than him working for him.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important. Never let your ego get in the way of a great opportunity, because learning's really important. And I can tell you, I'm still learning stuff about cooking and food every single day, so you never stop.
Good. Must be another question. We have one.
We have another question.
One here.
From our Head of Tourism and Hospitality, Glenn.
Thank you.
Hi, Neil. No pressure.
No.
Do you think having a hospitality background has helped you in business as far as your resilience and being able to change quickly and to adapt to trends?
Yeah, look, I think so. I think my experience in hospitality, I mean, if you look what hospitality and many businesses have been through it, but we tend to be at the front line of things. And I've been around, when I first started working front of house at sales at McMahon's Point, and in North Sydney, there was a massive advertising contingent there. So they basically finished work every day at midday. So at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there'd just be bottles of port on every table. I mean, now you would sell 1 bottle of port a year. You used to sell 3 dozen a day down there then. And then random breath testing came along. And so that actually, that really took a hit. And then we had to sort of pivot when I was going to say GFC, not the GFC, when fringe benefits tax came in the 80s, that really knocked the restaurant business for a six. And then we had to recover from that. And then we had things like 9/11 and SARS, which were international events that changed tourism for a while and changed the flow of people into the city and how city restaurants were behaving. So we had to sort of adapt and change to that. And then we had obviously, the recession that we had to have that I talked about, where we went through this fundamental change, massively high interest rates, massive recession, high unemployment. Trying to strive to keep a business alive in that environment was just hell. And then obviously GFC, and I just spent $11 million on Rockpool Bar and Grill and Spice Temple. And so, GFC hit in kind of August, September, October, November, its worst. When we opened in January and March the next year, the hangover from that. But people in the city celebrated.
You had great timing, haven't you?
Yeah. But interesting, the people in the city celebrated that, and they said, we're so sick of not doing something, and that was a grand room. And then, of course, you just get over that, and we're going really well, and then we get into lockdown and come out of lockdown, and then we're back into lockdown again. And I was opening a restaurant around lockdown, so if you take all the 3 times that I've opened 3 of my major restaurants, my timing is really rubbish.
But did the city though? I mean, actually, obviously, Rockpool was, the original Rockpool was in the Rocks, then Rockpool Bar and Grill. City, like the city isn't as busy though anymore. I mean, I don't know if
it started to come back, but the trading patterns have changed. Like Thursday's the new Friday, Monday's terrible, all that sort of thing. But it'll come back, and I believe in the city, and the government's very gung-ho about bringing it back. Yeah. But to answer that question, I think all of those things have made me realise in my life that nothing is forever and nothing is certain. Every time you're in a really good, rich vein of doing great business, expect something to happen. And when that happens, you've got to change and adapt, otherwise, like the dinosaurs, you perish.
That's right.
And it's really important never to think in terms of, I've always done it that way, so that's the way that I'm going to do it.
You have to, the acceptance of change, I think, is one of the most important things I've even learned in my world.
Yeah.
With the digital world, which is obviously a huge, that all happened within the media. You have to adapt, and if you don't adapt, you die. So
well, it's like things like the restaurants being under threat from home delivery. And now you've got things like Providore, where you've got finished boxes of food. And I mean, when I started with restaurants, we had a diary. We wrote down names, rang up phone. Back in the day, we had a till. We pressed the button. We used to joke about the fact there was a lot of cash around in those days. You'd have a shoebox under the till, so that's how it used to go. And now there's no money. No. Now you're tapping your phone. And the point of sales, runs everything.
I always think though I feel a bit with leaving tips now for staff, because not many people are carrying cash. And so
but it just goes to the staff anyway.
But I always sort of think, it's not fair, because people would like leave $10 or $20 or whatever, and no one's got cash. So
we'll tip, because it goes to the staff and they love it.
Okay.
And it's a motivator.
That's why,
put that 10% on.
Thank you, Sam.
We love it, but the reality is we've had to pivot and change, and I think that's what makes our industry, because it's so frontline. In one way fragile, because it's always at the front line of every disaster, but also so incredibly resilient because people have learnt to adapt to that change and know that, you know, there's something coming. I mean, I don't know what it is, and I think what the situation is, you know, during COVID, I signed the lease in July for 2020 for Margaret. I signed the lease for the bakery at the end of 2020 in December, and I'm just signing an agreement to lease for a new project that I'm doing in Double Bay, all through no staff in Australia, the threat of COVID again. But, you know, lots of people are opening new restaurants because we're all optimistic. We all believe the future will be brighter, and we all believe we'll learn to cope with it if it isn't. So we don't know exactly what's coming, but we know. And all the students have to come and work.
Have to, yeah, there's not even a can. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's resilience is the
Probably one more question, Nicole. No, I think we're out. But there wasn't anything quickly? Really quick question? No? No. Well, Neil.
Cool. Thank you.
Neil Perry, thank you.
Thank you,
for
Melissa.
giving us your amazing words of wisdom. Your career is just continuing to ever get bigger and bigger and bigger, but all within that nice clique of Double Bay.
Yes.
And in the air and in cars. So it's a very good mix. So thank you, Neil. Thanks for your time, because I know
Pleasure.
it's very, very limited.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.